Hi, I'm DeVan. I'm currently a technical analyst at Perlit Corporation. I handle a lot of our SharePoint and Power Platform implementations there, some custom app building automations. I currently have my own business that I do on the side after work, DeVan Unlimited, where I do strictly Power Platform, app building, automations, SharePoint integrations as well. Um, I'm excited to be here and I guess show what I have for you guys.
Cool. Thank you, Duke. And we're really excited to be sponsored by Power BI Tips. We have Mike Carlo here as well, who's our producer and putting together, all the bits and pieces here on the back end to make sure that this presentation and such goes perfectly here. Thank you for joining us, Mike.
No, thanks. This is an awesome group. This is the Power Platform. So I represent kind of the Power BI icon of this platform that we have here. Anthony and Steve are doing a heavier job on the Power Apps and Flow and Power Automate kind of stuff. So kudos to them. I'm just here in the background, kind of hanging out. But yeah, happy to help produce and bring content to you guys. So awesome.
Thanks again. And then quickly with the agenda, just we did the introductions here. We'll jump right into the presentation at the end. If there's any questions, we can address those and do some final wrap up. Overall, here is our LinkedIn page that you guys can find us at for the Milwaukee Bruce City Power Platform User Group. Really excited to have everybody here today and excited to kick this off. One thing that I did want to plug here is that the Power BI version control solution that we did put out just not too long ago. This is something that we've been focusing on not only from the beta version that's out now, but also taking a lot of time to make that into the next major version here. Steve and I have been spending hours and hours on the back end here, just making sure that that's being taken care of, and we're listening to the people with the feedback, and we've met with many of them as well. So users are all over the world, so really excited stuff, and look forward to bringing that forward. Steve, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think just we're getting close to having a big update, finalizing some stuff. So yeah, gonna have some more webinars and how to use and what it is, what it isn't. So look out for that. It'll be published on Power BI. Follow us in the LinkedIn and we'll publish it there. So really just going to make it a lot easier for you guys. And I think it's going to be a really robust solution when it's fully released. So very excited.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And then Duke, we'll jump right into the presentation here.
Okay, guys. So currently I work in manufacturing. I've been working in manufacturing for the past 8 years, 2 of those years in IT. And so I'm kind of familiar with a lot of the processes and everything that goes on. And so as I got on the business side and they started talking about quote to cash and all these different acronyms I had no clue of because I just built product for years, I kind of just learned a few things. So part of the quote to cash process is essentially you take a quote, you create an order, you fill that order, you ship it out to the customer based on whatever they ordered, whatever you quoted them for. And so that's kind of what order fulfillment is. I'll step through that in the application, then I'm gonna go over the necessary components, and then I'll just demo the application for you guys. If we go to the next slide, please. Or can I? Oh, I can do it. I'm sorry. Oh, you got it. And so this is just a general definition of what Wikipedia says about order fulfillment. So order fulfillment is, in the most general sense, the complete process from point of sales inquiry to delivery of a product to the customer. And briefly, as much as I can, I'll step through the different components that we have here. So SharePoint, I guess I'll start with this. Any application that you build or any automation that you build, you must first have a data source where you're pulling your data from. So in this case, we'll be using SharePoint, but there's others out there like Dataverse, Azure SQL Database, SQL Server, whatever. There's multiple data sources out there that you can use to do your automation and build your apps. We'll be using Power Automate for the automation piece, which would tie off to Outlook inside of Power Automate, and then we have Power Apps where the app was built, and then a mobile device for this particular application. So I wanted to do something that was more of a IoT type of thing to kind of get us in where we're going paperless. now with business the way it is and all these different applications and everything, everybody being faster, paper kind of slows us down. So if you can eliminate some of those tasks out of your process, then you can speed it up a little bit. And so I'll get into the demo now. The first thing I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna show you how I set up the database and everything, or SharePoint, and I'll share my screen for this. Oh, that's in the way. Okay. So I set up a company called Fake Company, and just to go through this process, I set up quite a few tables, and they're all relational. Well, you have to do the relationship matching inside of Power Apps because SharePoint is not a relational database. So if you're thinking about doing something with relationships, SharePoint isn't the spot unless you're going to do all the manual work inside of the automation piece or inside of Power Apps. So we have one. It's the order head which is just basically the top level, tells you what's on there, the order number, total price, need by, state of the order, whether it's been invoiced, and how many lines are on that order. Then you get into the detail, which would be the different parts, or different pieces or different line items that are on there. I have a parts database or list, which just gives all the vitals about the part. So part number, part name, weight, price, who the particular planner is, whether it's manufactured or purchased, the lead time on it, then the on hand, everything that's going on in the bin. So the on hand, max on hand, min on hand. Yeah.
Could you zoom in on your browser just so we can see, some more of these details that you're showing here too?
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm on my Mac. I usually work on my.
Yeah, you got the new Surface Book.
Yeah, I normally work on that, so I'm trying to figure out I haven't touched this thing in a while. Hold on, let me go up here. Oh.
Even in the browser too, if you hit the ellipsis top right.
Oh, here we are. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. So it just shows again the vitals. So planner, part type, lead time on the part, whether it's manufactured or purchased, the bin number that it resides in, and then in here I included a link to the schematic for the part, just in case whoever is picking or packing or doing the QA on the part, if they're unfamiliar with the part, if you're training a person on this process, they could go inside of the app, which we'll see later, and click on the link in the part, the schematic of the part will show up for them. And then this is part bin, which just lists the part, the part name, and then what bin is currently residing in, and all the vitals for that bin as well. If you would have noticed on this particular list here, I just added some lookup columns, so I didn't have to do all that manual pulling everything over. These columns are looking up to this part bin here, so whenever they reference that part, they can see it. And then we have the crate. These are the different crates. Crate status, whether it's empty or full, what orders are inside of that crate, items inside of that crate, and then the crate detail, which would just list out the items that are inside of that crate. And so I'm gonna switch over to Power Automate, which is just our automation tool. And this is an instant flow. And so what this does is, once a button is clicked inside of Power Apps, then this automation will kick off. So all I'm doing here inside of these is, once I get the different parameters that I need, I'm sending a request to SharePoint to pull back whatever that record is that I put in there. And then I'm setting it, then I'm parsing that JSON, that body that comes back. And then I'm sending another request back out to SharePoint with whatever's in that body. So what did I request here? Oh, the bin ID. So the bin ID I requested again from this particular body that came back, and then once all that takes place, the information is sent out an email. So this particular flow just creates an exception. And so what that is when they go out to pick the part, or they go out to the bin and they're say I got 75 for this order, the bin, the current on hand says is 85, but I get to the bin and I only have 70. We need to generate an exception right away because we need to let the planner know, or whoever's in the buyer, whoever's in charge of that part, let them know that, hey, we're going to be short on this order. And the whole emphasis on this was to get ahead of the customer. What I've realized in working.
This is something that's like more like business process, making sure that, the bin isn't empty, or that there's not, some type of, restriction or lower. And, it's more of the management side of the business process, making sure that everybody kind of understands where the inventory is and things of that nature.
Yeah. Just stay ahead of the customer. I found that it's easier to call the person and say, hey, we're going to be short, as opposed to them waiting on their dock for a couple of weeks, like, where's my order, or them calling you.
Right.
To keep the relationship healthy. And so let me kind of like it here. And then so I'll show the app on my phone. And so what you earlier said that you needed a mobile device for this one. I just built this one for my phone. It could be tablet. It won't work. It won't work properly if you try to do it on a laptop. So tablet or a phone for this particular app. I'm gonna switch over to it real quick. Let me take my window again. Okay, let me know when you can see my phone. Can you see my phone?
Let's see here. Just let it load for a moment. Looks like I can see it here. Yep.
Okay. And so this is what the app looks like in my phone. So I just go over through the landing page when you arrive. The order is assigned to a particular person, whoever that picker or that packer is. The planner can go in and assign it to whoever. So when they pick up their device, when they come in the facility, they don't have to run around trying to grab papers to figure out where my order is or what orders am I filling today. They could just open their phone, go directly to their app, and then they'll know what orders that they're picking for that particular day. They can either be the picker or the packer, depends on how it works, or how you have it set up. So you could pick it. Yeah.
One quick question would be, between the picker and the packer, like, can you explain those different roles and how they would interact with the app individually?
Okay, so the picker is the person, when they come in and get their order, they're coming in and view the order, or they're the one that's responsible for filling the order, essentially. The packer, once it's picked, they'll come over and then they'll take it out of the crate, scan it out of the crate, and then they'll go through the process of weighing it, getting all the shipping labels for it, packing it, and then staging it in a different area of the facility for the forklift driver or the material handler to come and get it, and then get it onto a truck.
Basically, there's two roles that integrate with this app. The role would be, a picker that would integrate with the app to understand, what it is that they're pulling out of the inventory, and then the packer would kind of do that process after the fact.
Correct. And so it's important to remember, off of this one app, or just this whole process, multiple things can happen. You can set up a whole situation for a quality person to come in, inspect the app. You can do whatever it is that you're trying to do, because it's all tied to a database. So you can do multiple different functions on this with just this app. I don't want to think of it just as this app, but it's an entire process. I'm just demonstrating the app right now. But if we go through, so I'll just show you how the landing page works. You could click on pick or pack. If you're the packer, you'll just get a button that says scan, and then you would go to that crate, you would scan that crate, and it would list what's in that crate for you. And then you could also just pick it. So we'll start with the picking process first. So if we click on pick and we go view, then you'll see your order number and then your part number. And so it just lists out, the different parts or whatnot. I didn't remove that crate, it shouldn't be in there, but we'll go past this. Then we'll see the field portion. So it's just 045, but that's what the request is. The demand for that particular part for this particular order is 45 parts. We need to fill that. And so what we'll do is we'll go in with scan. And so once you get into the scanning area where we're going to scan it, go to a bin, we're going to scan and do our counts there. It'll tell you what bin it is. So the bin is FCB001, part number DH001, lead time is 30 days, on hand 200, min 100, max 300, then the demand, then the items pick, and then the due date. And so the only time that there's input control at the bottom of the scan button becomes live is once you scan the part. And so I have a barcode set up here at home, Let me just switch my mouse real quick. So I have everything here set up at home. Now the barcodes and everything were built in Word, so you don't have to purchase a particular barcode generator. You can do this all in Microsoft Word. And so I'm gonna scan a bin. First, I'm gonna scan the incorrect bin, and then we'll see on my phone that we'll see some validation occur on my phone. So it's FC1 scan on my phone.
What you're doing right now is you're scanning. You're using your actual camera on your phone.
Yeah. Hold on.
Kind of walk us through that process and how you were able to get that to work with Power Apps, and then also, from a business perspective, I guess the pros or the positives that adds, from the experience perspective.
Okay, I'll do it once this thing's in. See, we had this problem last night. It may be the screen. Let me back out, come back in. No, that one. Is my hand shaking too much?
Yeah, sometimes the screen, I've had that same deal when you're running through the test, and not to mention, of course, when you're demoing, right?
Right. So here, what I'll do is I'm gonna actually move this over to a different screen. Then I'm gonna switch my input to that screen. This screen should work better. Okay. Out the way. All right, this one should be better. And so I'll go to that particular bin, and let me move this over because my cord is too short. All right, so I go to the particular bin. So it's scanned it. It's an incorrect location, but I'll do it again if you missed it. So again, invalid location because that's not the bin that it resides in. But then we'll go and scan the correct bin. So now we have valid location, and then we can enter the parts that we're picking or generate an exception. And so what I'll do for demo purposes is just generate an exception. And so let's say the bin is off 25 parts. I'm gonna create the exception. Actual on hand count is, well, the actual on hand is 25 instead of the 200 that they said. Then we'll submit it, and then shortly you'll see, well, that's there. Shortly you'll see an email pop up at the top of my phone. So go in, click the email. Oh, yep, I got. So we see that an exception has been generated. Please review. So the order number, the part name, part description should show up in there. The lead time, the bin number. The reported on hand is 200. The actual on hand is actually 25. And so an action needs to occur on the business side to make sure we get those parts, or either get the parts in or call the customer and say, hey, we're going to be late and our lead time is this, or however that works on that side. I don't particularly work the phones for that, so I don't know how that happens. But we could then go back into the app. So say we wanted to actually say we're actually picking the part from the correct bin, which would be, let me scan again. Then I'm picking 100 parts. Submit. And so now those parts would have been picked. Let me close out of here. Close out of there. And then I'm going to pack. Let me grab the bin or the crate that it should be in. I think it's in this one. So it's a valid crate. Oh, that didn't work too well. Hold on, I have to fix something. So what should have happened there was it would go out to the crate and list what's in that crate. But I don't think I reset it last night when I was working on it. So let me take a look at the crate. Sorry about that. So so I set a couple flags in here to basically show if the crate is still active, then you could scan the parts that are on that crate, but I didn't change them back, so let me change them quick. Now let's go back and scan that again. Display port. Let me come out of the app and go back and open the app again. So now we see what's inside of that crate. So again, like I said, if you're training, a training purpose, one of the actions that I added in here was to view the drawing. And so what'll happen is I go in, I click on view the drawing. We can open up that particular drawing for that particular part here in a different browser. It'll pop up in a new browser. So that way we can kind of go paperless. Same thing with this part. You'll get a drawing. Well, that's actually the same part. But so how this currently works, let me turn these off. So when the person when the operator pulls the part out of the crate for them to, before they pack it or anything, kind of want them to inspect it, make sure, yeah.
The app, can you pull that in front of the browser?
The app?
Yeah, I think you're walking through the app right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm actually, I think I may have moved it. Oh, sorry. All right, so let me go through this again. So if you click on view the drawing, you'll be able to view the drawing for that particular part. And so on here, that it would be the same drawing because it's all the same part that's being loaded on here. But when you get ready to go, or the operator goes to get ready to pack out the part, some type of inspection needs to take place. Make sure we're not sending any damaged material to the customer. And so what we do is if it's been inspected, yes, and then we'll have a checkbox that will show up that says, right now it says not ready to pack, but if we click it, now it's ready to pack. And what that does is it adds it to a temporary collection. And once we push the pack line button down here, it'll pack all of those, and then we'll send it off to SharePoint and we'll close it. And so once we come back in here, inside of SharePoint, refresh. It's just set that part to close, which it did now. So now that's closed. Then we just go back home. And then once this starts over, that item or that particular order, once it's closed out by whoever, once it's shipped, they will no longer appear in that packer or that picker's queue. So that's how that app works. Any questions?
Yeah, this is a really powerful app.
Thanks.
Yeah, when it came to like the SharePoint screen, I mean, like the back end, like you started with SharePoint. I mean, what are the future enhancements? So it's at this stage now. Like, what were some things that you were looking at that maybe you'd want to bring to the next level?
Well, I actually want to move it out of SharePoint into Dataverse, because that seems like the place where everybody's starting to go now. You can do a little bit more with Dataverse than you can with SharePoint. You can actually use Dataverse inside of Teams. So I'm just looking at different ways of moving, because I'm used to working with SharePoint, but I'm starting to see now that may not be the future of app building or just automations in general, especially when it comes to mission critical things. So moving it over to there. Also enhancing this application or just this process in general is creating a dashboard or possibly tying this into like maybe a Power BI. Power BI wants the reader to see the metrics for what's going on for that particular month. How many orders were late? How many how many bins were off count for that particular month? So we could try to get better or do a continuous improvement function to make sure that we're constantly meeting customer demand. So there's quite a few different things that can happen with it. Generating PDFs off of it if we decide to go paperless and we do have a need for paper per function or whatever we need, whatever we got going on, we could generate a PDF of what was actually on that order and just print it off. There's so many different things that you could do with it.
Awesome. What about when you were building this app? So what were some of the difficult parts when you were building? Because we all run into that. I mean, Power Apps, it's not custom code. There's some limitations you got to work around. Were there any workarounds or any pain points that you ran into? Everybody sees them, so it's one of those things.
Oh man, I think. Working with SharePoint is tricky. I would say there's a huge workaround with work. Anytime you're working with SharePoint and you're trying to do something where you're creating relationships.
Sure.
One of the biggest things, and especially when I try to work with SharePoint, anything that I could limit to a text field, I just strictly put it in as a text field because other like choice fields or other complicated fields or calculated fields can cause you an issue when you import it over into Power Apps. And so you'll run into filtering problems and then making sure that what I found with text, it's easier to run delegable functions inside of Power Apps as opposed to using a different field like a date field or something, which would give you an issue while you're trying to build the app.
Yeah, some of that formatting, it gets, it's like work with the formatting, getting in the right format and then getting it out and then, reformatting it to make it look pretty, from an end user's perspective. Trying to think what else. So from I guess outside of the back end side, from a more Power Apps and building the Power App, what were some of those components that you ran into, that you were using that I would say maybe worked flawlessly at that point? That there's sometimes you just plug it in, you're like, dang, that was quick. Like going through the build.
Oh well, integrating with Power Automate. I guess it's easier now because I've been doing so many different integrations with Power Automate for like one particular client I had where I had to build a prescription form, and anything in that dashboard, the custom dashboards that I built for them, required me to integrate with Power Automate to run different workflows, to go out to SQL Server, grab data from a payload that I got from a Shopify cart or whatever. So that worked pretty well. It was quick. I knew that would be quick. I thought certain other functionality would be quick. Like I put like maybe 35 to 40 hours into this app, and I thought it would be probably like a 20-hour thing. But no, integrating with Power Automate was the quickest and the easiest part for me.
Awesome. Where do you see yourself kind of with that, dividing line between Power Apps and Power Automate when you're making a decision? You can do the processing in Power Apps, or you can do the processing in Power Automate. Or maybe you're kicking, I guess you're kicking data out to, the back end SharePoint. You can do some of those connections through, Power Apps, or you can do it through Power Automate. Where does that line get drawn?
Well, it's about functionality of the app for me. So if any of the formulas that I build out in the Power Apps is going to require takes a lot of processing, then I'll kick it over to Power Automate and just let that handle it on the back end. If there's like a date field or something that I'm trying to manipulate, I'll probably kick that over to Power Automate and let it fill it in itself. Like just a regular patch of like maybe 1 or 2 records to a list, I'll probably just do that inside of Power Apps. Just some small functionality I do inside of Power Apps. Anything that's bigger, I'll kick it over to Power Automate, let it do its work. And if I need to return the data back to the app, then I'll do it that way. I just don't like to have, when the app runs too long in certain areas. And some people may think 10 seconds is not a lot of time, but when you got an end user consistently going back and forth in between that thing, 10 seconds is a lot of time.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always one of those things. I mean, you're evaluating while you're building, and it's a lot of fun because it happens really quickly. You can almost test both sides of the fence there pretty quickly. What are your thoughts around what are your thoughts around the barcode bit? Getting that to work. Getting scanning or creating barcodes, working through all of that. What were your experiences there?
Oh, well, when I first built it, I was a little upset because I didn't realize the particular one that I was building, like code 39, I think it is, or in Word, it requires that everything is uppercase. So when I was putting in, kept on getting required characters aren't validated or something like that, some type of error. And then so I was just playing around and then put everything in uppercase and it worked. I mean, I think like as far as working with barcodes, especially working in a manufacturing setting or any setting that you're, picking something or you need to scan something to validate something. I mean, I like it. I like it. I like being able to do it from a phone. So we're not, because, some of these devices that you have to purchase could be, hundreds of dollars. If we're trusting our employees or whoever to just, do an IoT implementation with their phone or an old phone that, there's so many IT departments where they have old devices laying around. We could repurpose that device that's laying around and put a barcode scanner on it and do our work from there. So I like the ability to have that and be able to generate and do everything in-house with it.
That's awesome.
What I find cool about barcodes is, I didn't know this, but they're just a way to represent a string of usually numbers. So really they're universal. So, a lot of shops that have products with a barcode, that number is going to be easy to look up in a database somewhere and know exactly what that product is. So I think it's a really, really cool feature that not many people use enough, and especially in manufacturing, but that's universal. So it's, one barcode's not necessarily listed just to one thing. You can just see that number and take it anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, good point, Steve. Beyond that, I would say, I know that we didn't, looking at like the power app there on the back end, was there anything that, from a component perspective that you were trying and just didn't add in, at this time, I guess there's different ways you can kind of manipulate the strings and things of that nature. You and I had talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much I was trying to do in there. I think as far as me with like developing, I'm always trying to grow my skill set. So I'm always trying to pull in like difficult columns and stuff to work with. But as it became closer, like, okay, I got to get this out. I want to get this done for this presentation. Because this app, I'll say, this was built for this presentation. This isn't something that I had just lying around and that I built upon. I saw, I work at a place in manufacturing where there was a need, or I assessed the need, I should say, or thinking about it. Like, this would be cool if we could do this. And then when you presented me with the opportunity to present, I was like, okay, I'll build something custom. And so that's how this came about. So there was many different things that I thought, just in general, where I work, and I even went on YouTube and watched different order picking and packing processes to figure out how this thing should work, how this thing should function, because I only did it in a limited space. But seeing how different people do different things, and so there was so much that I was trying to integrate into this app. But as we got closer, I had to start pulling a lot out, just like, okay, let's get something going. And then if I do put this into production, or I'm asked to put this in production in whatever space, then I'll have a little bit more time or a little bit more research on hand to actually develop it the way that I think I can.
Awesome. Any questions that we're seeing out there from the audience, Steve? All right, or I guess just to call that out as well. Anybody that's any of the attendees here, if you guys have questions, write them in. We can make sure that we get some answers here. This is a really useful app, something that almost all manufacturing companies, even just IT in general, always getting these boxes and having to inventory things. It's not really just manufacturing. It's anybody that's has a process, they want to digitize it, and then this is the way that you can have multiple personas that are built through an app and work through really just digitizing it in a way that makes sense for that company. So like Duke was showing earlier, with all the information that he presented on screen, it's information that can be used not only during this app, but maybe some sub processes and things of that nature that can drive that.
We do have a question in the chat from Anne. Hey Anne, and nice to see you again. We've seen her in a couple of our meetings before. So is there an issue with updating inventory level if someone else has the same products ordered for a different order? Or can the data source handle it on the fly? So looking at kind of transactional.
No, it can handle it. So it's all on the filters inside of the app. So I'm pulling by part number, by order number. What is it? I'm using order number and the part number, and whether or not there's multiple flags I set. Let me go over to. Hold on, my screen isn't showing it. But there's multiple flags that I set to handle that. I currently handle different things like that in different applications I've built where multiple users are in. So I always account for that when I'm building an app for multiple users. So order detail.
Hey, dude.
So it's by order. Yeah.
Just quick question. Are you sharing your screen right now? Because I think it may have dropped.
No, I'm not sharing my screen.
Okay.
And so I go by order number, part number, even on the crating side, if the crate is filled or if it's not filled. So you won't run into any issues with multiple people running this app at the same time. That'll be fine. There's multiple it's able to handle multiple transactions.
I think that's a great question, and I think that's important for app building, because a lot of the times we overlook those type of questions. So really being able to error handle them, asking just what can go wrong and what would happen if two people use it at the same time. To create these flags and error handle is one of the most important parts, I think, building a successful app.
No, I've even had that with I do that with like an Excel spreadsheet where we need to multiple people need to use an Excel spreadsheet, and there could be multiple people in the app at the same time. And so what I do is as soon as they click on it, it generates a new spreadsheet on the fly, and then the template or the old one becomes immediately available to whoever needs to use it. So no, I try to keep abreast of those things so you don't have people screaming at you, I can't use the app because somebody else is in. That'd kind of defeat the whole purpose of streamlining the process.
We do have another question here. It's regarding stream data from Azure Data Warehouse to Power Apps, continuously sending data from Power Apps to Azure and processing these data and getting the processed data from the data warehouse. So looks like they want to use streaming data in data warehouse to Power Apps. There's probably some thoughts on licensing as well. I do, but Anthony, you can have some thoughts on that one.
Well, yeah, I think once you once you use data warehouse, you will need to upgrade your licensing, I believe. Well, Anthony will know more than I do. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, from a licensing perspective, for sure. I mean, there's definitely implications there. Outside of that, when you're looking to like refresh the data and have continuously sending data back and forth, it would be more of a manual or a timer process there. There's not really the ability to continuously have data that's just running on your screen. So you'd have to refresh that in some intervals, whether it's manual or you set it up to be automatic. But certainly still be able to connect into those backends. But when it comes to the continuous streaming, I think there's probably some more conversation around exactly what the use cases are there and diving into the process. But ultimately, making that work would actually sounds like a pretty good idea. And then also, oops, sorry.
I was going to say it might be a different tool. There's you have a Stream Analytics or an Azure function or something like that. So maybe Power Apps with the help of some other tools.
So Mike, the producer, is going to jump in here on this one because streaming stuff and things around the data warehouse side is kind of what I do. And so I would highly recommend, like if you're thinking about streaming or a lot of transactional level, real-time kind of looking at things, you're going to start looking at like a SQL server, right? So SQL servers are really around ACID level transactions. When you start Googling what ACID transactions are, it allows you to retain states of data in a very accurate way for yourself. So you're going to move probably away more from SharePoint. You're going to start looking at more higher end back-end level tooling pieces. And if you think about like Dataverse and SharePoint, they're kind of more like a landing place where you're going to put information. It's not more of that transactional real-time level details that you're actually want to be looking for. And at that point in time, you're going to start jumping over to like what are the proper systems to support that stuff in? Am I looking at like a Cosmos DB? How fast do we need to do this thing? Do we need to hook into Stream Analytics or something else that's a bit more real time? And then leveraging that on top of your Power App. But my gut feel is when you start hitting that stream level, you're changing the licensing model that you're looking at. And I know SharePoint's a free connector today, but in the future, like if you're going to go to that route, you're now looking at SQL, and that's now a premium connector. And that changes how you're going to have to purchase the application. You can't just make it and give it away. Basically, you now have to start thinking about, okay, we've made the application, and now we have to start thinking about what does a per app or per user licensing look like to get that app to an audience of people to consume. And maybe Anthony, you can comment a bit more on the licensing. That's kind of my vague understanding of the licensing for Power Apps at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's licensing is important, but when it comes to working with a solution, I would say of that size and the way that you're looking to work with that information when it's streaming information. I have never used Power Apps specifically in that way, but I could see a use case that you'd want to refresh it on intervals. However, every time you open the app, or maybe on when you have the app open and you're working with it currently, and being able to refresh that is more of a manual thing. But again, you're working with that, you're working with records and tables and sets of data, but it's not really, you're not going to work with streaming information in that way. So more of a conversation around that would be, I'm very curious to see some of the use case around that. That would be, I think that'd be a fun kind of side project to dive into. So if you have more questions about that, I would say certainly reach out. Outside of that, I think, Mike, you hit on a pretty important piece when it comes to the connectors that you're using. It's always in the back of your mind, and although it could be a limitation if you don't have the premium licenses, but if you do have the premium licenses, I mean, the world is your oyster at that point. So once you kind of dive into that, you never really want to go back because of the limitations. I guess just keep an open mind about the licensing structure and where you are today, because it's certainly a way to kind of dip your toes and understand kind of what's in front of you and what the Power Apps and Power Platform can provide as far as the standard connectors. Once you jump into the premium, then it just kind of opens up a whole new world, but really kind of takes out the limitations that we run into a lot today. And Duke had hit on a point earlier with delegation. A lot of the delegation that you run into with SharePoint and using SharePoint as your database data source, and even working with files and trying to find the right file in a document library, you're going to hit a lot of constraints there. So if you're working with lots of data, that's where it's going to be exciting to understand, I guess, what are those other options.
But even if you're if you have like SQL Server on-prem or anything, so in the manufacturing facility I work at, Perlic, we use an ERP system. And so being able to have apps like this where you can integrate with that if you're doing REST services or you're doing a gateway to that to get access to that data, you'll need to upgrade your licensing to more premium connectors. But then you'll be able to interact with or integrate from your on-prem ERP system to now your cloud-based Power App, and everything will flow once you get everything set up correctly.
Hey, Duke, we did get a question as far as diving into the back end of the app. Is that something that you're willing to give a 5-minute overview on?
Yeah, what's the question?
Just as far as like how it was built, and then just kind of giving some insights there, where you started, and then probably just walk us through the stages of how it was built.
Okay, so as I stated earlier, I started with of course I started with my data source, and then I went over to the app. I usually tie in Power Automate a little bit later, but I started thinking about the process. What happens? What do you expect when you open the app? You kind of got to get into that mindset. So of course there's the landing page, what I want to see when I come in, and so I want to see my order number. I want to see what's available to me for me to pick that day, what my job is, what my task is. And so that's where I started from, and then it blossomed from there. Okay, so now that I see that, what am I supposed to be doing? Okay, we know an order has line items. So then I click the button to go over to the next part. Okay, give me all my line items. All right, now what do I need to do with these line items once I have that that information available to me there. Okay, I need to pick it. Okay, where's the bin? And so then it works like that. And so I go from order to line item, and then I break it down over to that particular part. And it happens, and it's cyclical. It happens for each line item on that order. And so that's what my frame of mind was when I started building it. Then when it came to the different actions, what do I want to do? So to get an order correct, you need to have some validations and some checks in place. You don't want to pick too many. You don't want to pick too little. You don't want to pick from the wrong bin. You don't want to pick the wrong part. And so that's the next step that I looked at. Okay, order validation, making sure I'm picking the right part from the correct bin, and then making sure I'm putting it on the correct crate, because with scanning, you could run into an issue if you don't set up your database correctly or set up anything correctly. So what I did was I had to validate validate the crates as well. Are these crates even in my system, or any? Because you could just scan any barcode, and we don't want that to happen, because then you just scan the barcodes for the sake of scanning barcodes. Now you got a database full of crap, basically. And so that's where I went next with it, was just doing the validation. And after that, it was another series of validating, making sure everything was correct, so we could streamline this process. So when we think about quote to cash, we're getting the customer what they wanted in a timely manner, making sure that everything is correct, everything is inspected. And then part of that too was making sure that my operators, when they're interfacing with the application, that they know what they're doing. That this process, because in any process like this, like, so for instance, I worked at Walmart. You should be able to train any process that you have. You should be able to train a person, because tribal knowledge will get you in trouble if you have if you're running any business. So I built this app in a way that when a person comes in, if they're new and they're getting trained, that they're able to get trained properly, and that if we need to train again for the next teammate that's hired, then we can do that over and over and over again. So those components and those factors went into me designing this app, looking at it from a business perspective and looking at it from a training perspective, as well as the person that's interfacing with the app to get anything done that they need to get done.
Awesome. You can tell that you spend a lot of time just kind of, getting to know this. Like you said, you spend time even just getting to know other processes. I mean, that's the way to do it, really, is because, like, if you look at it from, one angle, even if it's your own, business or organization that you're working in, you're going to be able to understand, that angle very well. But when you start to, branch out and understand, the broader process, what things are, possible, and kind of spend, some of that extra time on that, that's where you're going to see, big wins in digitizing, the overall process versus maybe something that would be a smaller sub process like this, and thinking about, more of the future state than just, what's here today. So that's really exciting. Thanks, Duke, for walking us through all of that today. Being able to show us the Power Platform solution from Power Apps, Power Automate, SharePoint. Really diving in there, and certainly appreciate it with all the experience that you bring to the table here.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.